Thunderbolts is what the MCU needed. Look, I'm not someone who has jumped off the Marvel train after Endgame. I've been very invested in the MCU, even at its considered low points, but even I can admit that I felt the quality of the content drop as Marvel felt stretched thin with so many projects coming out and then being made. I will argue that I personally think most of those projects are good or just okay. And I do think there's only a few of them that I would even consider really bad. Thankfully, Thunderbolt stood out for me for many reasons. And the biggest one is the tone of the film, and that it actually took itself seriously and not constantly trying to be snarky. To get my point across, I want to use another Marvel film that came out after Endgame, and I feel like it did everything the opposite way Thunderbolts did for me. And that film, of course, is Thor: Love and Thunder. Okay, I get it. Making fun of this film is kind of like beating a dead horse right now. It is a film that has been joked about how bad it is. It's just not a very well perceived movie, but it is kind of the perfect film I want to use in this case. The biggest thing Thor failed at was just not properly handling themes seriously and very much failing to balance when to tell jokes and when to take itself seriously. Thor deals with a heavy topic of like cancer. Honestly, my favorite parts of that film is when it's actually focusing on the nightmare situation that is dealing with cancer. I do really appreciate the scene when Thor learns about Jane's cancer and he's kind of he's talking of Jane in the hospital. I think that scene is really strong and it's really good, and that whole movie should have been more like this rather than just trying to tell a bunch of jokes that just did not land for me and many people. But a movie that deals with cancer also has scenes like this.
Let's see who you are. I take off your disguise. And flick. Oh, you flick too hard, damn it!
And now let's look at Thunderbolts. This film focuses on depression and the aspects of it like loneliness, suicidal ideation, which obviously depression and cancer are two different themes. What I want to use them against is not trying to say this one's better than the other. It's more of how they handle each of their own themes of two really dark themes that are really hard to handle. Very recently this year we had a movie called The Old Woman in the Yard that tried to handle depression and suicide ideation. That movie got really mixed. I am someone who leans on that it did it pretty well. I totally get the other side where people think that movie failed at of a movie that didn't do too well of a job on saying this thing is bad. And Thunderbolts, being a superhero movie trying to handle that topic, easily could have flopped and did a really bad job of, hey, we get this magical thing or whatever. But it doesn't do that. Thunderbolts is about this really dark topic. The jokes never undermined it. It never feels the film changes tones a lot. I'm gonna go more in specifics. All the characters in this movie are just super depressed, and throughout the whole movie, you can just tell they're ready to give up on life. I mean, there's just so many moments where characters are just ready to die. I mean, the scene where they're like about to get torched to death, Elena doesn't even look sad. She just looks relieved. Speak about Elena, two characters I really want to talk about that I feel like really represent the themes of this movie really well are Elena and Bob.
Hi.
Thunderbolts has made me fall in love with this character so much. It just adds another depth to her that I honestly really like. Florence Pugh is such an amazing actress. I really don't know who could have made the "Daddy, I'm So Alone" scene as emotional as she did. Also, Yelena is now definitely top 10 MCU characters for me. I don't think I've really related to a character as much as I had with her, but throughout the film, we really get a sense of not only that depression and loneliness, to see that kind of arc where she starts this film not really knowing who she is. She doesn't really know the point of living anymore. She's doing the same thing every day. She's very lonely. Her and these little misfit crew of mercenaries, they don't necessarily get along. The aspect of, having someone's back and them having your back really helps her. Thunderbolts are formed. We kind of see that she does feel a bit more happy. There's also this really nice scene in the middle of the film when Bob's asking her how she deals with, depression, and she just kind of goes, you just shove it all the way down. And of course that was a joke, but that is a genuine thing a lot of people with depression do. That leads to a really great message near the end of the film. Pushing it all down is not going to help, but talking to people, being with people, surrounding yourself by loved ones, that is the greatest way to handle depression and loneliness. And they do all of that through Elena and some other characters, which leads to my next character I want to talk about, Bob.
Who are you?
I'm Bob.
Bob is a really interesting character for me. I really felt like since we meet him, he's such an interesting character. He's very like timid and feel like there's something wrong with him. He's kind of talking to himself. He's very shaky. And and again, to go back to that same scene I was talking about, the pushing all the way down, he tells Elena that the world would be better off without him and she stayed down there and die. And that was a gut-wrenching moment because it was just like, oh boy, like that is another relatable feeling that a lot of people with depression go through. And it's just, I love that this film uses all these different characters to show different aspects of it. And this video could be very long. I could go into how each of these characters have a different form of depression. And again, to give credit to Lewis Pullman, did such an amazing job, acting like different Bobs. You have this, you have the Bob at the start, you have the Sentry, you have the Void, and all those moments are really raw and emotional, and Bob does a great job. As much as I praise Florence Pugh for her performance for Elena, equally Lewis Pullman did an amazing job as Bob. Another thing I want to talk about was the direction. The director, Jake Schreier, I messed up that last name, I'm so sorry. He did an incredible job directing this film. Another thing I wanted to talk about, but I love his decision. I don't know if it really was his decision or not, but I do really like the direction of trying to do more practical effects than CGI. Obviously, when you're making a superhero film, depending on who you're doing, CGI is going to come in because superheroes can do unhumanly things that you cannot do practical effects. Obviously, they use CGI. And Marvel, I think, is probably the biggest company or studio that gets criticized for overusing CGI, but also how poorly they treat their VFX teams. I do think the decision to try to be as practical as they can was a great one, and it honestly made the film look really good. To make this video not go really long, I'm gonna give out some quick credit. So first off, the soundtrack is amazing. Sunlux, sorry if I messed up the name, did a really amazing job on it. Red Guardian was a very nice character. Anytime he was on screen, I was dying of laughter. US Agent was just a lovable dickhead. Ghost really didn't get a lot to do in this movie besides killing Taskmaster, which was really disappointing. Hopefully in future films we'll get to see more of her character and add more depth to her. Bucky was of course just an awesome character, very enjoyable to watch. I am very happy that this film didn't go plain way of making him the main character, making the big focus on Bucky and the team. They could have done that and it would have just been a fine movie, but I feel like focusing on characters that haven't had much time in the MCU yet, as Bucky has had since Captain America, was a really good choice. Focusing on Elena, just a really great decision. Thunderbolts is such an amazing movie. I really do hope this team makes it out after Doomsday and Secret Wars so we can get a proper sequel. Here is my Letterboxd score for this film. Also, here's my Letterboxd if you want to check out my thoughts on movies before I make videos of them. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. This is my first video on this channel. And I'm really excited to work more on this channel, make videos for this channel. It's gonna be really exciting. I have some plans I'm gonna focus on and work on really hard to get to you guys. So anyways, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing day or night, whatever time you're watching this at. Hope to see you in the next video. Goodbye.